Championship weekend fantasy football. Welcome to the Roto Wire Start Sit Show, everyone. Like I told people last week, you're a smart fantasy player. You've gotten your team to the championship game. I'm here to help. You make your decision. Your season rides on it. I have an opinion. All games have variables. I had somebody complain last week. They had two rugged options at quarterback, Anthony Richardson, Aaron Rodgers, and Rodgers should have been in a higher scoring game. I never saw the Colts game going 38-30. And then somebody complained, oh, well, what you told me and I lost my game. Well, I get it. I understand. But when you have two garbage options, you're not always going to come out great. And we all are in that boat. We're all in that boat. I'm in that boat in some of my teams. I got some garbage options. And, we try to find with the right scenario. It's all probability game. I give you a 5% edge on the field. Always say that. Can't give you 10, can't give you 20 because that's not realistic. Get you 5. And some are going to be wrong. So we go with the probability. You go with your gut because you are a smart fantasy manager. Like I said, you got your team to a championship. I didn't get you there. You got yourself there. So you're going to keep riding that, but I will give you all the feedback I can to help, fill in things that maybe you didn't think of, or maybe you just want some confirmation. But just remember, your team, your title, go win it today. All right. All right. That said, some very important weather implications today. The big one is Jets, Buffalo. 21-mile-an-hour winds, but the gusts are supposed to be 40. And that's supposed to be like throughout all 4 quarters, according to NFLweather.com. 50% chance of rain. The wind, though, and there will likely be some rain. I think the outside receivers for Buffalo, I don't think Josh Allen has to waste his time going there. I think he can, operate in the middle of the field, got a big arm. I don't know that they've been challenging the outsides a lot anyway. I think Allen runs a lot. I think Allen's fine this week. I think the running game is really going to be focused on in this weather for sure, especially if those gusts get in, and those gusts are somewhat sustained, over time. That's going to be a problem. I think it's a bigger problem for Aaron Rodgers because I think Buffalo is going to send pressure. And so I look, you start Devontae Adams. If you got him, you start him. He's Devontae Adams. Garrett Wilson, I mean, he's been boomer bust most of the way anyway. So that weather game is important. Carolina, Tampa Bay is rain. They're not calling for much wind. I'm not really worried about the Tampa side. Bryce Young, with his inability to probably drive the ball to the perimeter, I think Adam Thielen's fine. I don't know how much more I would trust there. Tennessee, Jacksonville, we're looking at rain and 15-mile-an-hour winds. We have 2 backup quarterbacks, 2 quarterbacks who are not the strongest arms in the world. The combination of rain and the wind, it is concerning. I believe these teams had a real low-scoring game. I think I called it one almost to the identical score when they played last time. This could be another low-scoring game if this weather factors in that both teams may be a little bit more conservative. Miami, Cleveland, another problem. 20, just like the Buffalo game. 20-mile-an-hour winds, 40-mile-per-hour gusts. We have 2 quarterbacks, Dorian Thompson-Robinson. Tyler Huntley supposed to start for Tua. That does not bode well. Jonnu Smith is fine. Pass catcher-wise, really don't think I would trust anybody else with those quarterbacks in that wind. Tyreek played 3 games with Huntley, and he had 1 12-point PPR game. He's not a guarantee to go as of the time we're starting. We'll see what that is. And then finally, Atlanta, Washington night, rain and 13-mile-an-hour winds. Don't know how heavy the rain's going to be. I don't think I would make any regular downgrades on this game. I think both teams are going to run a little more than we think, too. I don't think that's going to crush it. All right, got a couple super chat questions to open this thing up. Half past the hour, we'll look at any injury updates that we get, and then we'll go. So good luck in your championship week. All right, I got 2 super chats. John, Bucky Irving or Devon Achane. So Achane played 3 games with Tyler Huntley. I want to say his biggest PPR game was 10 points. I think he had a 2, a 2.8 maybe, a 5, and a 10. That worries me. Because as soon as Tua came back in, Achane going back to catching 6, 7 passes a game. If you didn't have another great option like Bucky Irving, I would say never sit Achane. But the fact that the 3 games that Achane played with Huntley were horrible fantasy outings, since in this game, the wind is going to be a major problem. The weather's going to be a problem. And it may be where defense is kind of loaded up, and that could be a problem. Bucky Irving, it's a great matchup. Bucky Irving's been playing at a super high level, and there's no reason that Bucky Irving doesn't have a huge game. So based on those probabilities, I think your probability lies in Bucky Irving. If you can't live with Achan being on your bench, I completely get that. But that's my take on it. We got a few super chat. Thanks for doing this. And anybody wants to jump the line, that's your way to jump the line. Make sure you attach a question. I see everybody here has. Once in a while, we get somebody who doesn't attach a question, and then I feel terrible because you donated a super chat, but you didn't get your question. So make sure you add it just like everybody here is. Randy, good to see you. Need two non-PPR. So you got the old standard league: AJ Brown, Dontavian Wicks, McMillan. Look, Wicks, we never know what we're going to get. Wicks does have real upside. We're not expecting Watson to play, and there's nothing scary about the Minnesota matchup for Green Bay that knows this defense well. So it's not like the pressure's gonna be a problem. McMillan, look, J.C. Horn is out, best cornerback that Carolina has. If they want to slide coverage to Mike Evans, it's going to make things easier for McMillan. I don't think the rain is a problem for Baker Mayfield. It's not going to be a windy day, and that's the break point for me. I think AJ Brown's fine. I think with a game plan, and I'll tell everybody this, the Kenny Pickett thing, he's a bad quarterback. We understand that. But he came into a game last week where there was already a game plan in place and he had to run that. Well, this week they knew Hurts wasn't going to play. So they installed a game plan for Kenny Pickett, in my opinion. And that game plan would be real simple. Well, Dallas could rush the passer, even though Philly has a great line. How do you beat them? So we throw screens to Barkley, we throw screens to A.J. Brown, and we just get it out and let those guys do their damage after the catch and let Dallas get caught, with they're sending too many rushers. So I think that A.J. Brown is fine here. I think he catches a lot of passes, and I think he can break some. I think the Dallas secondary, they're down Diggs. They're down the other corner that replaced him. Complicated name. I don't know how to say his name. Initials are AO. I'll go with that. So yes, I think Brown's. I would start Brown and McMillan. I don't know. Wicks is just too tough to trust. And McMillan's had 3 good games in a row. And then rank the defenses: Dolphins, Colts, and Eagles. And I got to put the schedule up here because I'm looking at these. I want to make sure where the weather's impacted on this. So, the Dolphins are playing Dorian Thompson-Robinson in a heavily weather impacted game with massive wind. Just based on that, the Colts would be a good play, but I think the weather makes the Dolphins an even better play. Both the Dolphins and the Colts are playing for the playoffs. The Eagles, I mean, all three are great. All three are great. I would go with the team facing the worst quarterback and the worst weather, but again, crapshoot on that one. Defenses, you never know what you're getting. But I would say weather and Dorian Thompson-Robinson, I'd bet against both of those. Rakesh, half PPR. Thielen, Downs, Garrett, Wilson. Yeah, you had a rough one from, I know, Smith, and Jig, but man, Seattle soiled the bed. That was a rough one. I think in the rain, I think that Thielen is fine in the middle of the field. I think Bryce Young can make that throw. He did very, very well against Tampa a few weeks ago. He actually got cheated out of a touchdown by the referees. It was an easy, clear touchdown, and they didn't rule it a touchdown. I don't get that. He would have had 2 touchdowns. I think he had like 99 yards, top of my head. Downs is always a great play with Joe Flacco at quarterback. Garrett Wilson, I think the weather in Buffalo is going to be enough of a problem to put him to the bottom of that pack, although he's the best player of the 3 by far. I think both Thielen and Downs have both high floors and potential for big ceilings. And ultimately, the fact that Thielen's been getting it done almost every week, I might give him a 51-49 edge over Downs. Trust your gut on that one because either of them could go off. But I think Thielen is more likely to see 8 to 10 targets. But it's super close. But I would rule Wilson out. But my lineup, again, I love both of those guys. So where do I have them in my rankings, actually? Let's see here if I can even see that from here. Downs at 13 and Thielen at 15. So, yeah, I didn't see it. I put Garrett Wilson with downside right in the middle. So, the funny that the 3 you list are all together. And these are the remaining players out of this week's class. We have games, a bunch of them played already. So, if you just go on my sheer rankings, I got Downs a slight bit ahead of Thielen. But that one, yeah, I think Thielen is more likely to see more targets for what that's worth. Downs is more likely to make a big play. I don't think the weather in New York's a problem. There's nothing like wind-wise is going to be a problem. So I think we're okay there. All right, next one. Bigsby or Wicks. So the game with Jacksonville is supposed to be weather impacted, and what I think that means, I think the defenses are going to kind of load it up and knowing teams are going to want to run the ball. Tennessee is actually a good run defense, so it's and ETN did well as a receiver against them last time on screen passes. I think Bigsby does have a bit of a floor. It's not a great floor in half PPR, but I do think he has you a 6 or 7 point floor. Whereas Wicks, we know the deal. He could drop 3 passes, and that could be he could like totally zone out for the day. So I think if you want a floor play, it's Bigsby. I think if you need 15 points, Wicks could do that. He could clearly do that in what should be a shootout in the Dome in Minnesota. But I think Wicks is a very boom bust play. So be careful with that. But if you want to say floor, it'd be Bigsby. So it depends how you want to approach that. Another super chat here. Randy, Rodgers, Flacco, Bryce Young, Penix, Mac Jones, or you need upside. The weather with Rodgers would worry me. That the wind gust being in the 40s, Rodgers doesn't have the arm he used to have. Flacco playing the Giants, it's a very favorable matchup. We know, but Jonathan Taylor's been running hot, and it's possible against New York they may keep that script. Bryce Young, the weather concerns me. I think he's fine with Thielen. I think outside, not so much. Penix, I don't really like the matchup. Dan Quinn probably confuses him quite a bit, and I don't think the rain helps. And then Mac Jones, no, not with the wind. So the only one I would say the biggest upside of this group would be Flacco, though, because Flacco could get going with Downs and Pittman. And maybe New York comes out trying to stop the run. They obviously all have a big nicks on them. I think that one of the most clear path to upside would be Flacco, though. And then flex, Tracy, Abdullah, or Kendre Miller. Abdullah has been pretty reliant on the Raiders trailing. They're playing the Saints. I don't know if they're going to trail in this game. So in my mind, that would mean a little more Alexander Madison. Could be wrong. Tracy, man, he's lost a couple of goal line touches to Singletary in the last one. That's crushing his fantasy value. He catches some passes, which helps. Indy's a good defense. Indy's not a great, they're a good defense. Kendre Miller obviously soiled the bed last week. Obviously, this should be a much closer game, but he was splitting with Mims. Mims had more work. That stunned me. So of this group, I would think Tracy probably is the most stable floor. And I would say the boom bust play would actually be Kendre Miller, because if they do get out to a lead, they may keep him in the game. And he was getting 10 carries a game before in the 2 games before last week, which again, it stunned me. They didn't use him a lot. Abdullah, like I said, I'm just worried because game script isn't likely in his favor. So Tracy for floor, Miller for boom bust. And then we got another super chat here. We got Scott. All right, Scott. Oh, man, Scott, appreciate you. 11 title games today. I hope you win all of them, Scott. What a fantastic season you're having. You're a great fantasy player. Keep the great work up, and thank you for donating to the cause. All right, we'll go to the questions in the regular chat. All right, evidence of absence. Can Devontae Adams and Malik Neighbors be? Yeah, Adams with I'm not worried about the injury with Adams. I think his upside may be limited by the weather. Again, 40-mile-an-hour wind gusts. Oh, yeah, not excited about that. 20 sustained miles an hour winds. That's a bit of a problem. I think Adams will get some short passes. I think he has a good floor. You hope he breaks one. Neighbors has been playing hurt the whole way through. If he's active, then I think you got to go with him, because he's been getting it done. He's hurt every week. So I don't think it's any different this week than it's been in other weeks. So I think you do trust Neighbors. Adams, again, I just don't think he has the ceiling he's had. But the weather bothers me. I wouldn't play a bad player in front of him. If you had an excellent fantasy option, then I would consider it. But otherwise, I think you got to ride Adams here. Julian, Mooney or Thielen? That's a good question. Like I said earlier, Thielen had, I believe it was 99 yards and a touchdown. He got jobbed out of a second one he should have had. He did have it in the back of the end. It was clear touchdown. Middle of the field should be fine. Tampa really can't slow him. I think Thielen has a safer floor and Thielen has a real ceiling. Mooney, there's going to be rain. I don't think the wind's not going to be catastrophic, but 13 miles an hour, which, it could be just a little bit of a distraction. I would probably roll with Thielen because Carolina's probably going to have to score points and no Chuba Hubbard. They probably don't get a sustaining running game. Kraft or Okonkwo, Okonkwo's been loaded up with targets lately. Now we have a weather game here. And so, heavy wind, rain. It's not going to be a good forecast here. I think that slows them down quite a bit. Okonkwo, they like to split him out a bit too. So, I think that works against him here. He's not like that typical zone buster tight end. He's more of a seam stretcher. So that the weather probably plays against him. So I would probably go with Kraft in what's likely a shootout in the dome. That would be the way I'd lead. As always, everybody, trust your gut on these. I'm giving you a little input and insight, but you got to roll with what you believe. But I'm glad you're asking these questions. And like I said, I just want to make sure you understand. I'll give you the variables, and then you make your best decision from there. Julian Abdullah, Blackshear, Bigsby. Blackshear could catch the ball. As to how much they throw to him, I'm not sure. I know Boone will be involved a bit. The offensive line is very good for Carolina. They'll be without Taylor Moton, the right tackle. That's a bit of a ding. I think more in pass pro than in run support. Abdullah, as you heard me say a minute ago, he's really dependent when the Raiders trail. He gets involved quite a bit. They may not trail here, and that worries me a bit because he's like the hurry up back for them. So that worries me a bit. I think the biggest upside, though, would be Abdullah from these three, because if somehow that game gets both teams get scoring, which this game could be 6-3, it could be 27-24. If it ends up shootout, then Abdullah gets involved. Bigsby's the safest. Bigsby's the safest play here. He'll get you a floor. He has the best chance of falling in the end zone. Abdullah's your boom bust play. Bigsby's a safe floor with a moderate ceiling. Again, he's not going off here. But Abdullah's, again, I'm worried about game script for him. I would rule Blackshear out because Tampa's also good against running backs. So, all right, Trey, good morning to you. Happy holidays. You need a defense. Dallas, I won't go with them. The Philly offensive line should be able to slow them down a bit. Tampa, Bryce Young shredded them last time, but there's rain, so there's that. And then Vegas at New Orleans. If Vegas was at home, I would like them a whole lot better. But it's Spencer Rattler at quarterback. We're not going to see Chris Olave. We're not going to see Bub Means. So realistically, I would go with the Raiders, even though they don't have Max Crosby, because New Orleans is so limited on offense. Yeah, so that would be the way I go. And yeah, because like I said, Bryce Young did well against Tampa last time. Andrew, Guillotine League. Need one from A.J. Brown, Devontae Adams, Brian Thomas Jr. Man, before the weather report, I love Brian Thomas Jr., and I don't ever recommend sitting him. You see, I got him super high in my rankings. I did these rankings yesterday, and then I always wait till the morning to check the weather. I got Brian Thomas as my wide receiver, 8 of the remaining players. A.J. Brown, 7 with downside. Now, that same red tag should be on Brian Thomas because the winds are supposed to get into the mid-20s, and that's significant because Brian Thomas catches a number of downfield passes, and it's not like Mac Jones has a big arm. Devontae Adams, the same wind concerns. So honestly, I think this is my personal opinion. The game plan for Pickett now with a week to install, it's a lot of bubble screens to A.J. Brown and quick slants. Dallas is banged up in the secondary. They really don't have a corner to hang with him. I think they're going to mitigate that pass rush. I would think Brown has the highest floor. And again, Brian Thomas always is like the ceiling play, but the weather does concern me. If you don't think the weather will be an issue, I think Brian Thomas wins this battle. But I do think A.J. Brown gets schemed up a lot of looks here. Again, Adams, I'm very worried about the weather for him in terms of upside. I got another super chat, then I'll get back to Jay. Rakesh, Oh man, you asked me kicker questions. Kickers require all luck, and I have none. I never do kicker questions. What I would tell you, and look, I will get a kicker wrong 100 times out of 100. What I'll tell you is this: Reichard is the kicker for Minnesota. They're in a potentially high scoring game. They're in a dome. But again, I get kickers wrong every single time. But I would say Reichard because of the dome and the score. But again, I have zero luck, and kickers require luck. Defense, that I can help you with. I think Cleveland's checked out. I think they've checked out. I read like interviews from them this week, and players are already talking about the offseason and next year. So I would be very concerned with them. Washington, yeah, not so much there. Indianapolis. So it's between Indy and Vegas. I'd give Indy the edge. Indy's a good defense. They do everything well. They do nothing great. But against this Giants offense, that may be all it takes. And I do think Drew Lock makes mistakes. I do think there's a chance for a pick six. Not can you predict one? No. I would this group, I would probably give Indianapolis the edge. Second place would be the Raiders because again, they're playing a JV squad. Saints offense. And so that would be my recommendation there. All right, see where we're at on here. Jay Red, I think I'm on you. All right. Yeah, Connor. I know. I know it was tough with Connor. I know somebody asked me a question yesterday. It was like 4 like tough options. They all had like huge downside. And I said Connor has big downside, but of the 4 he had, it was like I probably would start Connor, but he could fall apart, and unfortunately he did. All right, Ferguson or Strange. Right now, I don't think we could trust Jake Ferguson. Ferguson has had 3 cake matchups and literally done nothing. Cooper Rush has been horrible for Ferguson. To predict that to change against a Philly defense that's decent against tight ends, that's a hard sell. So I am going to Strange, yeah, he didn't do much last week, 2 for 22. But I do think with the heavy wind and the rain, I do think the short passing game is going to have some impact here. And so I do think Strange gets more targets. I would tend to give Strange the edge. And actually, Strange was going to be targeted in the end zone a couple games. It was 2 games ago, but he got interfered with. Defender pulled him. And so I think Strange has a better chance of scoring a touchdown. Strange has a better chance of catching 4 passes. I'd give him the slight edge, even though Ferguson is an excellent player. Situation's bad. Buffalo or Tampa defense. Again, Tampa doesn't really force a lot of turnovers. The fact that Taylor Moton, the right tackle for Carolina's out, that helps, but Carolina didn't really make many mistakes against them. So I would be inclined because of the bad weather to go with Buffalo. I think they're going to send some extra pressure at Aaron Rodgers. He's been very skittish with pressure. Tough call on that, but I would probably lean toward Buffalo because of the weather. Kevin, good morning. You need one of the following PPR: Brian Robinson, Tyreek Hill, Wan'Dale Robinson, Mooney Thielen, or Garrett Wilson. You need one of those. The safest floor of that group in PPR, I have to think, is Adam Thielen. It was like $8.99 and a touchdown last night. You heard me say a few minutes ago, he got robbed out of a second touchdown. He was clearly in, and whatever reason, replay decided not to follow the visual evidence. But odds are they're going to have to score points to hang with Tampa. The rain isn't an issue for Thielen because he's middle of the field, and the wind isn't supposed to be an issue there. Brian Robinson Jr. is always in play, but Atlanta's a decent run defense. Tyreek Hill didn't have more than 12 PPR points in a game with Tyler Huntley in the 3 games they played together, and Hill is apparently not close to 100%. Wan'Dale is a floor only, but it's not a high, it's not much of a ceiling. Garrett Wilson, if it wasn't for the weather, I would think about that. I probably do have Garrett Wilson ranked a little higher. Let's see where I have. I moved him down though. I have Thielen at 15 of the remaining players, and I have Garrett Wilson above him, but you can see I have the downside tag on him. So I would go with Thielen from that group. Kraft or Hockenson. So the linebackers for Green Bay are a big issue in coverage, and Kevin O'Connell, the coach of the Vikings, is very good at exploiting that. and they do very good at cloud coverage on outside receivers. So I think Hawkinson would be my play. I do think Hawkinson has a great chance to get you 6 catches in this game. Kraft is always a great play too, as I like Kraft's matchup. But I think Hawkinson has a easier path to volume in this one. Steve, Downs or Devontae Smith? Kenny Pickett worries me. And Downs has pretty much been great with Flacco. I'm going to roll with the track record. And New York Giants, their corners really aren't effective in terms of defending Downs. Whereas Devontae Smith, where are the targets coming from? And is Kenny Pickett going to be able to do much with them? How many points are they scoring? I would lean Josh Downs. Trust your gut on that one, of course. Romeo Doubs or Tyrone Tracy? The corners for Minnesota wouldn't technically give Dobbs any trouble. It's just a matter of how many passes they scheme up his way. The place to attack Minnesota is in the middle of the field, and they do like to do that when they play them. Tracy is going to have a safer floor, but he's lost goal line touches to Singletary twice in the last month, which has been really rough. I don't know how much upside Dobbs has. I mean, I will say he has more upside than Tracy because Dobbs has a 2 touchdown game in him. Will he get it? No, I can't predict that, but he has that, and he does have a 70-yard game in his range of outcomes. And so I think Tracy is your floor play, but I think if you got to swing for some ceiling, I think then I'd go to boom bust to be Dobbs. But the higher floor play would be Tracy. If it's my lineup, I'm probably starting Dobbs here because Indy's been a good defense. They're not great, but they're good. All right. And then Ethan, good morning. Shakir Garendo or Rashad White? So Garendo is supposedly healthy. Detroit is pretty much down everybody in their front 7. Left tackle for the 49ers, Trent Williams, won't play the rest of this year, which doesn't help, but the 49ers still seem to be able to run a bit. Shakir, he'd be the least impacted receiver from the wind because he's in the middle of the field, but the wind is supposed to be very significant. Rashad White, his role kind of vacillates, but he and Bucky both got it done last time against Carolina, and Carolina really doesn't have much going on defense. I think that Garendo, again, he's healthy now, so we got to assume he's healthy. He would, in my mind, have the highest floor of this group. I would think White is your boom bust play because he's going to get limited touches compared to Bucky. Shakir, if it wasn't for the weather, I'd be in on him, but I'm a little worried about that. Again, trust your gut on this championship week 1. I give Garendo the floor play and White the boom bust. But if your gut says Shakir, I can't steer you away from that because, like I said, even if the wind's heavy, the slot may be immune to that to a degree. Mike, good morning. Full point PPR, you need one of Garendo, Madison, or Ford. Ford had a fluke 66-yard run like on the first or second play of the game last week, but then he ended up getting some catches later. I have to think that in a heavy wind game, he's going to be very much involved here. So I think his touches are going to be enormous. Madison, he has to get a touchdown like Cash because his efficiency is horrible on the ground, even as a receiver. I think of these 3, Ford may have a safer floor. I have Garendo ranked higher. I trust in the 49ers rush scheme. I don't trust the Detroit defense. And ultimately, I believe Garendo to be a better player than Jerome Ford. Now, Ford catching passes, you might have something there. If he catches 5 passes, maybe that does it. So it's between Garendo and Ford. If it's my lineup, I have Garendo a couple spots higher than Ford. If your gut says Ford, go with it. I think Garendo has a little higher probability of scoring. And Mike, yeah, happy holidays to you too. Oh yeah, Flowers. It's rough. I know he's a great player. They don't always pass. I think Lamar threw 15 passes in that game. That was all. You need 1 of the 4 in the wide receiver spot. London, Debo. I assume you mean Debo, Thielen, or Jamison Williams. So you need 1 of them. I still think London has a good floor. They get him in the slot about 40% of the time. I'm not really worried about the cornerbacks against him. Adam Thielen's tough to sit because again, he has had a super high floor. He did very well against Tampa last time. Debo had a great game last week, and you can exploit Detroit in the middle of the field. Jamison Williams is the one that I would rule out because the 49ers are back to health on secondary. Now watch, he gets 2 80-yard touchdowns and we call it a day, right? So I really think these three are very, very close options. In terms of the rankings alone, I do have Drake London as maybe having downside, but I have him as wide receiver 5. The downside could be if the weather is a little worse than we think it is. That's the concern there. Debo at 11 I have, and then Adam Thielen I have at 15 of the remaining wide receivers. If in terms of upside, funny enough, I think Thielen would have more upside because we've seen it already. We saw it against Tampa a few weeks ago, and Tampa's not going to have an answer for him. It's just that simple. They're not going to have an answer for him. They don't have an answer for many receivers. If I'm in my championship game and it comes down to this, I'm probably trusting Drake London because I've rolled with him most of the year, and he hasn't had the games I've wanted, but I know he's going to get targets. And there's that. So I would start London, but I would give strong consideration to Thielen. I would give very strong consideration to Thielen. Jeff, good morning. So Jaden Reed went for 137 and a touchdown the last time he played Minnesota. Minnesota, they struggle with coverage in the linebacking area. And what Coach LaFleur does, he often schemes Reed into the linebacker area of the field. So through motion and gets him a free release too. But we know the deal with Jaden Reed. 4 of the last 5 games have been like heartbreaking, right? Reed has massive upside here. Mooney, there's going to be some rain. The winds of 13 miles an hour, so it's not anything catastrophic. Still don't know what we got from Penix. I really don't know what we've got from him. And I think that Penix sees some confusing looks. Mooney probably has a higher floor than Reed. So I think Reed, and I have Reed as 25 at receiver, Mooney at 20, but you see I got the green tag on Reed because I do think that upside is really there. So if you need to shoot for the moon in this one, I'd go with Reed, but I think Mooney does have a safe enough floor, which would be higher than some of those 20-yard games we've gotten from Reed in the last month. All right. Matthew. All right. Thielen, McMillan, or Jamison Williams. So I'm going to give Thielen a slight edge over McMillan because the probability is that Thielen sees 2 to 3 more targets. Both have great matchups, but Thielen is really the lead guy. Close, but he's really the lead guy for Bryce Young. Whereas McMillan, if it's a Mike Evans game, or if they get out to a big lead, they might not need as much. Thielen's probably going to be needed for 4 quarters. So I give Thielen the slight edge. Jamison Williams, like I said earlier, love him. 49ers are back to health in the secondary, and he could break a long play anytime. But banking on that's tough. I'd give Thielen the edge because he has the floor and ceiling, in my opinion. Trust your gut, as always, in the championship week. Lee, happy holidays to you. Appreciate you. Thanks for listening to the XM show as well. What a blessing to be on that show. I'll tell you what. Jonnu Smith, the Conqueror Craft. Jonnu Smith had 2 really good games with Tyler Huntley. And with the wind, the tight end screens, I think, could be a staple here. Smith's been carrying you. I don't see any reason to go away from him. If he didn't have the 2 last good games with Tyler Huntley, I would have steered away. But again, the way he's used in the offense, I think it's windproof. And so I would go with Jonnu Smith, especially with Jalen Waddle out. That's what I would do. I would keep riding Jonnu Smith. Pick 2, PPR flex, Okonkwo, Williams. So I think Okonkwo will be a little impacted by the weather and possibly a really low-scoring game. When Tennessee has to play catch-up, he's been getting a lot of targets. I don't know how much catch-up you're playing against Jacksonville. They may not have to. So I'd go with J-Mo and Hawkinson there. All right. So, Lee, it looks like you widened the net out a little bit with this one. Pick 2 in the PPR. Love Juwan Jennings this week. Where do I have him in my rankings? I got to have him high. I got him at wide receiver 9 of the remaining players. And Neighbors, it's always, if he plays, I put a red tag on him because he's hurt every week. We're concerned about it, but nobody on Indy would really slow him down. It'd be hard to go away from Jawan Jennings, which I think with Detroit, I think he could catch 7 or 8 passes. I think it could be a big yardage game. And Neighbors, it'd be really hard to go away from them. And I love Thielen this week, but not, if you're worried about Neighbors' injury, then you could maybe default over to Thielen. And I get it. If you're worried about Neighbors' injury, Thielen's a great pivot. So I consider that. I wouldn't really put the other players above them. Mojo, Thielen, McMillan, Debo, Mooney, Westbrook, Kine, Pittman, or Pierce. I think Thielen is you need to start 3 of them. Thielen's in, Debo's in because of 2 weeks away, dropped a touch on his last week. He looked really good. They got him in the middle of the field. Detroit, they're going to get him on the linebackers. So I like Debo to go here. For the third one, Mooney and McMillan are close. Where do I have them in my rankings? Let's see where we have them next to each other, of course, 20 and 21. McMillan's more likely to score a touchdown. Mooney's more likely to hit 60 yards. That is, like I said, I have a neck and neck there. If I'm looking for a tiebreaker, there's rain in Tampa Bay. There's rain in Washington, so that negates itself. Pittman, I just don't know. He's had games with Flacco. I don't know how much they're going to pass here. I'd be inclined to go with McMillan and ride the hot hand. I'd be inclined. But Mooney and Pittman are very, very close in that equation. I have Pittman a little lower in the rankings, but I could see a path for Pittman as well. But for me, Thielen and Debo would be it. Debo last week impressed me. Got another super chat question. All right, here we got the next one. Half PPR, Allen or Daniels. Yeah, you got a tough one here, right? Because Josh Allen, you're looking at those wind gusts up to 44 miles an hour, and he had the bad game last week. Daniels had the great game last week. And I still wonder how high scoring this Atlanta-Washington game is going to be. I really wonder how high scoring it's going to be. I wonder how much they're going to be running the ball in this one. Ultimately, I'll say this. Josh Allen had a bad game last week. Earlier in the season, he had a couple bad ones. But if the weather's bad, he runs more. I think Daniels running for 50 yards here. I think Jesse Bates, the safety from Atlanta, could goad Daniels into a couple of mistakes. Atlanta defense isn't great, though. It's a coin flip. It's a coin flip on that one. If my season's on the line, I would tend to go to Josh Allen because I could see him running in 3 touchdowns in a game like this and just overcoming the odds. But it's a really close call. But again, ultimately, you'd kick yourself. And you have 2 great quarterbacks. That's a good problem to have, right? You'd kick yourself if Josh Allen put 40 up and he was on your bench. And I know Daniels probably had that last week. Just think last week was an oddity game. I really think that Atlanta-Washington game is going to have more running than we think. I think that game could be like 23-20, and that would be – whereas I think Allen, no matter what they do, I think he gets it done as a runner. It's a very tough one, though. Trust your gut on that. All right, Tracy, Garrett Wilson, or Ridley. You need upside. The problems we have for Ridley and Garrett Wilson is they're both in a potentially heavily impacted weather game. Wind, gusts, and rain. That's not good. Tracy has lost goal line touches to Singletary twice in the last month. Ultimately, Buffalo probably gets a lead on New York. That would mean New York, despite the weather, probably has to throw the ball. So I would lean upside Garrett Wilson, hoping he gets a slant and breaks it. Ridley, again, if it wasn't weather, he'd win this one easily. Tracy, I just can't trust him because he loses some of the high leverage work. So That would be my upside shot to take. John, you're welcome. One more, Bucky Irving or Achan. Somebody had a similar question earlier, and so for that one, look, Achan played 3 games with Tyler Huntley, a quarterback, and I got inactives. I can check those in a second. And Achan didn't have more than 10.2 fantasy points, PPR points in any of those 3 games. Huntley just wasn't good at dumping off the ball to him. The running part's not good. The Dolphins do not block the run ball. I got to say Bucky Irving here. Bucky Irving smashed this Carolina defense. I believe it was 180 scrimmage yards last time, and he's the deal. And I just don't see Carolina being able to stop him. So Bucky Irving has a higher floor, and he has a similar ceiling. So I'd go with Bucky Irving. Let me check the inactives, and I'll come back to the stream questions. All right, Buccaneers. K. Dotton we knew was out. Sterling Shepard we knew was out. Malik Neighbors is playing. He's healthy enough to go with the toe injury. Again, he's been hurt all year. As expected, Devontae Adams will play. I like I said, the wind is the bigger issue there, but I would still start Adams as I normally would. No specific special injuries unexpected for the Eagles. The Bills, no unexpected inactives. Curtis Samuel, but nobody was probably starting him anyway. And that's all I have for right now. I'll come back and circle back and check on those. Tyler Boyd is playing. Not that you're using him, but we knew Tony Pollard was inactive already. Those looking at Tyjae Spears, just understand he has 4 touchdowns in the last 2 weeks. Tennessee was chasing in both of those games. I am very hard pressed to think that Tennessee is going to be chasing points against Jacksonville. It's probably a very close game. And as a runner, Spears has not been efficient at all. I think it was a 10 for 24 in there. He will catch a couple passes. So Tyjae Spears, be careful with Tyjae Spears. I have him as of the remaining running backs. I still have him as a running back 15 because of volume. Volume's king in fantasy football. And I do have him with upside. But be careful, because if he doesn't get in the end zone, you might end up with about 7 or 8 fantasy points. Again, a lot of players already played this week. That's why that list is what it is. All right, live questions here. See where we left off at. All right, we're up on Rodney here. Let's see how we're doing on questions. Yeah, we're fine on questions. Okay, we're in good shape here. All right, get back to here. All right, Rodney. Dolphins defense, Bills defense. You have Jerome Ford. Don't like your defense playing 20. Well, then trust your gut on that. Yeah, trust your gut on that. Yeah, you don't want to be negatively correlated. So make that real easy on yourself and just, don't negatively correlate yourself. And it expands you out. Then if one, then both could hit, right? Yeah. So that makes perfect sense. Robert, Happy New Year's. Well, half PPR, you need a flex. Dowdle, Pittman, McMillan. So as I've indicated in prior weeks and shows, when Dallas is going to play with a lead or close, Dowdle could get you 20 carries. If they're going to trail in a game, he might get you 10 to 12 carries. And that becomes a little problematic. But Philly's been very good against the run. And I know that they soiled the bed last week defensively. They just didn't show up. My guess is this week they will show up, because after that embarrassment, they can't afford to let the team down again, especially with no Jalen. I think the no Jalen Hurts going to get them a little more motivated too, because they know they got to pick up some slack here. But that said, Dowdle's your highest floor play because he's been getting volume. He'll get targets if they get the ball near the goal. I know Zeke stole one last week, but there'd be that. Pittman, we never know what we're getting from him, and really Flacco, because Flacco really likes downs ahead of Pittman. McMillan, to me, has been riding hot, 57 yards or more in the last 3 games. He's scored in them. J.C. Horn, the corner's out. Dowdle's the safest floor. I think McMillan's close in the floor. I think McMillan has more of a ceiling than Dowdle, because the Philly defense has been excellent against running backs. Now, that said, Dowdle goes for 200 yards and 4 touchdowns, right? I get that. But I do think McMillan would be the better blend of floor and upside here. But the safest, absolute safest play is Dowdle. That's safest. All right. John, Garrett Wilson, McLaurin. I've heard no negative news on Terry McLaurin. Nothing negative at all. And Garrett Wilson, again, it's those 20-mile-an-hour winds, 20 to 24 with 40-mile-an-hour gusts. Can Wilson house a screen pass? Yes. I just Kerry McLaurin, I just can't sit him right now. And there's nothing about the Atlanta corners that scare me at all. So at this point, McLaurin's kind of gotten you there. Wilson's kind of been up or down, but I've heard no negative concern about McLaurin and an ankle injury. So all right, next question, Slick Rick. You need a receiver 3 and a flex. Downs, Dobbs, McMillan, Myers, Abdullah, Kendre Miller, Okonkwo. All right. All right. So when Josh Downs plays with Joe Flacco, he has been outstanding, and I would be very conflicted to sit him. I would play him, and I'd be very confident. And I also think Jacoby Myers is a great blend of floor and ceiling because aside from Bowers, he gets the targets, and the New Orleans defense has not been scary at all. Obviously, they traded away Lattimore. Paulson Adebo's been on the injured reserve. And so I think those would be your best floor and ceiling options, with McMillan being really close. Dobbs kind of close as well. But I would be inclined to go Downs and Myers on that one. Downs or Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill played 3 games with Tyler Huntley, did not get more than 12 PPR points, and the other ones were like a really, really low. And Hill is apparently not close to 100%. Downs has just gotten it done with Flacco, like I told the last question. So, look, I would never want to tell somebody to sit Tyreek Hill. If you can't live with that as a fantasy manager, don't do it. I'd play Downs. But if it's your fantasy team, and if you're like, man, Tyreek Hill goes off on my bench, I'm not going to forgive myself, then don't. But he did not do well with Huntley in 3 games before. So I don't know what would change here. And also in that game, we got potential for weather. The weather's not supposed to, the weather's not going to be good. So that works against Tyreek as well. Oh, that's a good one, Master J3. Tough call on this. 49ers are great against tight ends. That's one thing. Jonnu Smith played well with Tyler Huntley the last 2 games. I think he had a 12 in there as well, like PPR, maybe even higher than that. He played, maybe more than that. He played well with him. And in the rain and wind game, I would think the tight end screens would be a big deal. Look, Jonnu Smith's kind of gotten you there. Laporte has been coming on lately. Trust your gut on that one. I would ride with Jonnu, who's kind of gotten it done all season, even with Huntley. But obviously, if your gut says Laporte, trust it. And I think I answered that for you already, Arkish. But I think, well, it was between Thielen and Downs. It was super, super close, like we said. Really a trust your gut one. I think Thielen does have a higher floor, though. So, but I told you on that one, trust your gut on that one. Bryce Young, Flacco, or Rodgers? Rodgers, I'm very concerned about the winds and the wind gusts. Bryce Young, the rain, I think limits him. I think him and the Thielen is fine, but I think the outside game is going to hurt. Therefore, I would give Flacco a slight edge here. Giants aren't getting much pass rush, and Dexter Lawrence went out either. Obviously, it's close, but I would give Flacco the edge. Of course, if Jonathan Taylor runs the ball all day, then there's that. I just don't see a lot of upside with Rodgers in the wind and Young in the rain. So that's why I'd give Flacco the edge. Like I'm telling everybody today, though, championship week, trust your gut on it. Right now, though, Tracy, Neighbors, McMillan, Brees sit 1. I would be inclined to sit Tracy. Again, he's lost 2 goal line touches in the last month to Singletary. He's not getting a ton of work, and Indy's a pretty good defense. That was why I would consider sitting him. All right, let's see what we got here. I got another super chat question. All right, we got Ryan, full PPR, Dowdle or Tracy. I expect Dowdle would get a little more volume than Tracy. And even though Zeke got the touchdown last week, I would think Dowdle has a higher percentage chance of scoring a touchdown than Tracy. They both could be involved in the passing game. I give Dowdle an edge in this one because, again, with Tracy's more likely to lose a goal line touch than Dowdle. Okonkwo or Kincaid, they both are in weather-impacted games. I do think, though, for Josh Allen, with the heavy in the middle of the field is a place where he could probably let it rip with his cannon of an arm. Because of that, I'd give Kincaid the edge. Chig has been living on game script. Titans have been trailing, and he's getting a ton of targets. Again, Tennessee, Jacksonville, I don't know that the game ever gets more than 3 points apart. And if that's the case, then those targets won't be there. So I'm going to give Kincaid the edge for that reason. Like everybody in championship week, trust your gut. All right. Tucker Kraft. So I just talked about Okonkwo. You heard that. So I will lean with Tucker Kraft in what I expect to be a shootout against Minnesota. And they do scheme their tight ends open pretty well in Green Bay. Get them on those tight ends. I get on those linebackers that don't cover extremely well. Drew. Yeah, well, you see, I have Reed with a green mark on him, and that means there's massive upside. Massive upside. He had 137 yards and a touchdown against them last time. So, but Reed has also had 4 games of 20 yards in the last 5. So I got to be very careful about the rankings, because every time we see Reed and we're like, man, this is the week, he gets 20 yards. But if you're playing for your championship and you need upside, that's that green mark. That green mark that's your play, because Reed could finish his week as the wide receiver 4. And it would not shock me for a second. But those 420-ish yard games, those scare me. They're in the equation, and he's done them far too frequently against too good a matchup. So it's a great question. All right. Downs, Achane, or Jennings. Wow, that's a tough one. The only knock on Achane, and if you can't live with having him on your bench, if he goes up, just remember, his 3 games at Huntley, he was terrible. I don't think he had more than 10 PPR points in any of those games, and nothing worked, because defenses don't trust the quarterback. They could stack the box, and Miami's offensive line doesn't block the run well, so that's a problem. I think Jennings is more likely in a shootout than Downs, and I love Downs, when Flacco's on the field, but Jennings is probably in a shootout, and I don't think any of the Detroit corners can really slow him down. And because of the shootout nature, I give Jennings the edge over Downs. Let's see where I have him ranked. Jennings at 9, Downs at 13. And that's about right where they should be. But it's close, as you see. It's close. But I think Jennings has a higher floor in this one. You heard me talk about Okonkwo, so I don't need to go over that again. But Hockenson, yeah, it's a good matchup for him. He'll get on the linebackers, and those linebackers agree one of them's out, and they don't cover well. And I think Hockenson could be in line for a very solid game. And again, Okonkwo, they're probably not chasing points, which means his targets would go back down in that scenario. McMillan or Ridley. Ridley would have been a great play, and I have him with upside. That's if the weather somehow miraculously changes. But the weather's a problem. And I got McMillan 2 spots lower, but there's supposed to be rain in Tampa, but not wind. So that doesn't bother me. So I think McMillan is safer. Ridley, that weather bothers me. There's just enough wind, and it's supposed to be thunderstorms like throughout. That's the forecast we have. So to me, McMillan would be safer. But I got Ridley with upside, because if that weather lets down, he has a great matchup. He could go off. And so that's the question. But according to the weather report and the likelihood it's a close game, McMillan's safer. But you got to swing for defense. Like I said, if that weather lets up at all, Ridley could have himself a game. George, Spears or Aaron Jones? So, like I was telling people earlier, I brought up Spears a little bit. He has 4 touchdowns in the last 2 weeks, and that was great. They were chasing points. They were in a couple of shootouts. How many points is Tennessee Jacksonville going with the rain and the wind? Is it 13-10? Is it 16-13? Maybe they get a 38-37. Maybe they do. But the probability is it's more like 16-13. And that means Spears was a very inefficient runner. If he doesn't get, he'll get a couple catches. If he doesn't get those goal line, if he doesn't score at the goal line, it's problematic. Aaron Jones, look, he hasn't had the greatest ceiling, but he's had a great floor. And Green Bay's a good matchup for him. And I think this game shoots out. I'm going with Aaron Jones here. I'm going with the better player. They're keeping him on the field a lot. This is a must-win game in a lot of ways. Yeah, their playoff spot is probably secure where it's at, but this is an important game for them. And they're not going to back off Aaron Jones. I'm going to give Aaron Jones the edge here. Much higher scoring game. Next one, please help. Half PPR and an underdog. So White, Ford, Mooney, McMillan, or Garrett Wilson. Rashad White will see less touches than Irving, but he had like 80 yards on 11 carries against them last time. Carolina's bad. Ford, I still think ultimately the weather in that game is going to force both defenses to kind of load the box. Ford, man, he had a weird 66-yard run on the first drive of the game. He probably catches some screen passes, but I don't know how much ceiling he really has. Miami's good against the run. Mooney, I don't know how high scoring this game is. I think people want it to be a high scoring game. It's going to be rain. I think it's a little lower scoring than we think. McMillan's been red hot, and Carolina's down J.C. Horn, and Baker throws the ball. I think your best floor play is probably McMillan here. The swing for the fence play is Garrett Wilson, but the wind gusts are going to be insane. And if he doesn't house one off a slant, it's not happening. I would probably just take McMillan as the safe play. That would be the way I would look at that. I would definitely give consideration to Ford, but if at half PPR, that might hurt him a little bit because I don't know how many rushing yards he's going to get. So I would probably recommend McMillan. Trust your gut again. Next one, Simru, you're welcome. You reach your championship game. Yes, Rogers. Because of the 24-mile-an-hour winds, the 40-mile-an-hour gusts, the rain that's expected there, that worries me with Rogers. He's not the player he was, and that's the game like this could really expose that. Whereas Flacco, maybe Jonathan Taylor runs all day, but he has done so well getting the ball to Josh Downs and even to Michael Pittman. I would tend to give Flacco the edge here. Rodgers, I expect Buffalo to send extra pressure because of the weather, and Rodgers has been skittish under pressure. So the probability with me goes with Flacco, but obviously we've seen Rodgers just have these crazy second halves come out of nowhere, and he erupts after the first half, like doing nothing. I give Flacco a slight edge in this one. All right. Spaceman Scotty, you need upside. Should I start London over Flacco? London really love London. I have a lot of leagues, but he hasn't really had upside since like early in the year. So I don't think so. I don't think so because first of all, I don't know how high scoring that Washington Atlanta game is. We don't really know what Penix is yet, and I don't know that Penix unleashed. I mean, there's gonna be rain. There's gonna be a little bit of wind, not overwhelming wind, but some wind. And I would tend to go Flacco there. I'm gonna go Flacco there. All right, and then okay, so you got the rest of your things all set up. Joshua, Penix or Pickett? My expectation for Pickett is that they're going to throw a lot of screens to A.J. Brown and either run or screen to Saquon Barkley. I don't think it's opened up, and you don't want to open it up because Micah Parsons could make your day a long afternoon. Penix, like I said, we really don't know what we have. And Dan Quinn is a coach. I expect him to throw some confusing looks at Penix, which could make it a little bit difficult. I think both teams will have some success on the ground. Penix, in my mind, isn't what we call like a guy who's going to run for 50 yards. I don't think he's that guy. Ultimately, it's razor thin close. Ranking wise, where's exactly where I have them at? I got Pickett of the remaining quarterbacks at 12. I got Penix at 10 with downside because if they run the ball a lot, it'll be a problem. Ultimately, I think A.J. Brown can get enough done for Pickett to give him a 51 to 49% edge. That's how close it is. It's literally flip a coin. I'm giving the slightest of edges to Pickett, not a ringing endorsement, but because Penix has downside, that's where I'm a little concerned. Chaz, morning. A.J. Brown or Devontae Adams? Brown was peppered with targets by Pickett last week. Again, I think more screens this week. A lot of bubbles and A.J. do some damage after the catch. Adams has to deal with wind. It's going to be 24-mile-an-hour winds, 40-mile-an-hour gusts. It's going to be rain. For that reason, I'm giving A.J. Brown the edge, and I don't do kickers because kickers require luck. Although I will tell you one thing, and I always get kickers wrong. Reichard is indoors, and he's in a potentially high-scoring game. But again, if you ask me a kicker question, I'll get it wrong every time. So there's that. All right. I wish I had luck. I just don't have luck. And I hear you'd rather be lucky than good. every time, right? Brian Robinson or Jacoby Myers? Oh, that's a great question. Brian Robinson should see a decent workload here. He has a decent chance of scoring a touchdown. I could see that Raiders New Orleans game being lower scoring. Now, Myers is obviously going to catch his 6 to 8 passes, and for PPR, that gives you a baseline floor that works. Do I necessarily see Brian Robinson going off? No. And so that's why I'm going to give Myers the slight edge here because he's catching passes. Aiden O'Connell is smart enough to say, all right, I get it to Bowers, I get it to Myers. And New Orleans, Paulson Adebo's down on IR and they traded away Lattimore a couple months ago. So I would tend to give Myers a higher floor edge and they both would have potential to score. So although Robinson has a greater chance of scoring a touchdown, I will say that for sure. Robinson has a greater chance of scoring a touchdown, and he does have. There's a realm where he scores too. So I think your swing for the fence play would be Robinson, but I think the blend of floor and ceiling would be Myers. John Achane without two or. I know. And if Garrett Wilson, you heard me talk about the 20 to 20, 22 to 24 mile hour winds, 40 mile hour gusts, rain, impossible situation. Achane didn't have more than 10 PPR points in the 3 games of Tyler Huntley at quarterback. Yet, Achane is going to be on the field. Cleveland maybe checked out a bit. Achane will touch the ball more, and they both have the ability to make a play. So, based on that, I'll give Achane the slight edge over Garrett Wilson. Thielen. 99 yards and a touchdown last time he played them, and he got ripped off out of another touchdown, which the referees, I don't know, instant replay, they do your job. He had 2 touchdowns in that game. I'm going with Thielen there. Thielen should, with the rain, middle of the field should be fine. All right, see where we're at here. Anthony, Ford or Thielen. Somebody said the same question, or was it you? It was you. Don't do kickers. I'm sorry, because I'll get them wrong every time. I'm the last guy, and it all requires luck. So sorry about that. I wish I could do kickers for you. Little tips. Any game that's not impacted by weather, any game with a higher over and under. But again, it could all be touchdowns and not field goals. So I'm sorry. I wish I could answer kicker questions. I just don't want to. I will get them wrong every time. Spears or Jonnu? Ooh, that's a good question. 2-point tight end premium. And that's why I'm going with Jonnu. Jonnu had 2 really good games with Tyler Huntley. The last 2 games they played. The first game they didn't do a lot, but the second and third game really got on the page. No Jalen Waddle. The weather doesn't worry me because the tight end screens are schemed up. They're short, easy passes. Tyjae Spears had 4 touchdowns in the last 2 weeks because Tennessee was playing these shootouts. I just really think that Tennessee-Jacksonville game is super low scoring. With the 2-point tight end premium, I give Jonnu the edge. If your gut says Spears, I get it. I totally get it because he has had 2 massive weeks in a row and there's no Tony Pollard. I get it. So if you trust your gut, it's your fantasy championship. So, but Jonnu has been very trustworthy. That extra point per reception, that could be huge. But again, trust your gut. Jonnu, same reason. Kincaid, the weather impact, he'll get some passes, but I think that's a little lower volume game. Jonnu's the number 2 right now. Kincaid, don't know exactly where he falls in the pecking order in this one. Spaceman, you're welcome. All right, let me check any other injury updates here. See if we got anything here. Raiders, no, nothing special there. We will be seeing Xavier Leggett out there, although I'm not trusting him a lot because the rain and the outside receiver and the weaker arm quarterback. Marquez Valdez-Scantling is playing against the Raiders. If you need him, you can use him. Jaguars, nothing special injury-wise. Carolina, we already knew J.C. Horn, the corner, is out, which really helps the whole passing attack. Linebacker Josie Jewell is out, which helps continued Bucky Irving and even Rachaad White. We knew Anthony Richardson is out and Joe Flacco. Sorry, we already knew that. Jalen Tolbert is playing for the Cowboys, but it's a touchdown or bust there. And that's what we kind of got there. All right. See where we're at here. J-Mo or Mooney, Brian? Mooney should have a somewhat reliable floor. I don't know how high scoring the game is. Jameson Williams is facing a 49ers defense that's finally healthy, and now I don't know how high their motivation is. They've been eliminated, but you'd think they show up to play here. I do think that 49ers Lions game is high scoring. I do think that Jamison Williams may have a higher ceiling than Mooney, but I think Mooney has a safer floor. I do think even in the rain, 13-mile-an-hour winds, I think Mooney gets enough receptions to be safer. Jamo's been getting more targets. He's been getting more targets lately, but I do think Mooney is going to get his share of opportunity. Mooney is a floor play, but if you want to go for ceiling, I do think Jamison Williams could have that chance to break that long play that we know they try to scheme up for him. All right, J Red, you need upside. Connor killed you, McBride, Dements, Ferguson. Maybe did you ask that one earlier? I don't know. Ferguson just has had cake matchups, hasn't gotten anything done, and now it's a little tougher matchup. Cooper rushes and maximize them. Strange, the win impact game, I think in the middle of the field, he's okay. I'd go with Strange. Defense, I would probably lean Buffalo because of the potential for extreme wind and rain, and that leading to some mistakes. And the fact that Bryce Young did pretty well against Tampa. There'll be rain, but not a lot of wind. So that would be the tiebreaker for me. Dylan, full PPR flex. So Abdullah tends to get more work when they're trailing. I don't know that they're going to trail the Saints. So if you agree that it's a close game or the Raiders could even play with a lead, it would be a Madison game. If you think somehow the opposite of I do, that the Saints are going to get this lead of more than a touchdown, then Abdullah's a play. But I'm going to go with Madison because I don't think that the Saints can get out to much of a lead. And then Miami or Philly defense. You know what? Betting against Dorian Thompson-Robinson in a bad weather game is always a good bet, so I'll go with that. Tampa Bay or Buffalo. And again, Buffalo, I'm going to go with the weather. I'm going to go with the elements here. It's supposed to be like heavy gusts and there's supposed to be rain. I'm going to bet on that, so I'll go with the Buffalo defense. All right, Spaceman Scotty, but I don't know the context of that. All right. Flacco, we're starting over Ridley and Jamo. Ridley's going to, again, potentially heavily weather-impacted game. I loved Ridley otherwise. I did love him this week. I had one upside. That's only an upside tag is only there under the guise of that weather backs off a little bit. Go ahead and go to NFLweather.com and just see if the weather backed off. But I checked it before the show, but who knows? Things change quickly, right? Jamison Williams, again, with the 49ers defense now being healthy, it's not quite the appealing matchup it would have been a couple weeks back. I do think Flacco would be worth starting here. Could Taylor run all day? Yeah, but they have typically let Flacco throw, and this is not a very scary matchup. Eagles or Colts D. That's a tight one. That's a tight one here. I could see them with no CD Lamb. With no CD Lamb, that might be the tiebreaker. Because no CD Lamb, man, they got nobody to be fearful of. And the Eagles are coming off that game where they were embarrassed defensively last week. I would tend to go with the Eagles. Brian Robinson or Jerome Ford. I think Robinson is more likely to score a touchdown. Cleveland's going to be in a massively weather-impacted game, according to the forecast at least. And I do think Robinson will have plenty of opportunities to carry the ball. I'm seeing like 13 to 16 carries, a couple targets, and a decent chance to score. Ford was great last week. He had that fluky 66-yard run on the first drive of the game. I don't know where that came from. There was a chasm I could have ran through, but he caught some passes. But again, with the nature of the weather being extreme in Cleveland, I would tend to go Brian Robinson. Hey, Jelly of the month, the gift that keeps on giving. Half PPR flex. Tracy or Reed. I assume you mean Jaden Reed. And you know what? We have Reed marked as an upside play. He had 137 yards against his defense. And Matt LaFleur knows how to get him on linebackers. Those linebackers can't cover. I would take the whirl on Reed, knowing he's had 3 or 4 20-yard games in the last 5, and I know they've been there. This game should be a shootout. Tracy, look, I mean, if he's going to keep losing those goal line touches to Singletary, so I would tend to go with Reed and roll the dice, knowing he could get that 20-yard game, but just thinking he torched his defense, and how do they not do that again? And no Christian Watson. All right, so there you go there. And then United Santini, Oh man, I'm gonna go with Debo. Tyreek Hill did almost nothing with Tyler Huntley for those 3 games they played together. I think he had a 6 for 60 in the third game. That was it. But the other games were like way worse than that. But this is gonna be a weather impacted game, and Hill is apparently not close to 100%. Debo dropped a touchdown 2 weeks ago that made his line look bad. Last week he looked really good. Looks like a rejuvenated player. There should be a shootout. They should get him on the linebackers who can't cover. I give Debo the edge. Jacobs or Bucky? Oh man, that's a great problem to have. Um, Josh, man, they both are incredible. Josh Jacobs is the engine to that offense, runs, catches, gets the goal line. Bucky Irving, a little bit of a split, but he had like 180 scrimmage yards against the same defense a few weeks ago. This is really a coin flip. Minnesota has a tough run defense. I mean, based on the matchup, Bucky has a significantly easier matchup. He's healthier now than he was a couple weeks ago. In a vacuum, I would say Bucky's the better play. But if you're going to kick yourself if Jacobs goes off on your bench, it's almost like you play your best players. But really, has Bucky been much less than Jacobs? So I guess that's really the difficulty of the question. In a vacuum, Bucky is a better matchup. Bucky has a higher likelihood of hitting 150 yards. Whereas Jacobs is the engine of the offense. I'd give Bucky a 51-49 edge, but in my rankings, I got to have Jacobs higher. I got Jacobs as my running back 3 because he's Jacobs. I got Irving as my 7, but I put him at 3 because he's been Superman. And if Superman's on your bench, that's what makes it tough. Jacobs earned that like ranking at number 3 for the week. He's earned it by his play. So I guess ultimately you go with the most reliable player, and it's probably been Jacobs. But again, in a vacuum, I give a 51-49 edge to Bucky, but too hard to sit Jacobs. Nicholas, pick one. Dowdle, Abdullah, Kendre Miller, Tyler Algier, Rachim. Dowdle, we do worry about if they trail because he tends to lose some work. But I think of this group, he has the safest workload. He has the most probability of scoring a touchdown. He has the most probability of seeing the most touches of this group. So I think based on that, I think we just say we got to go with Dowdle because he's the safest and he has a similar upside to all those players, if not more, way more than some of them. Yeah, this is a good matchup for Hawkinson, but you know what? Jonu's gotten you there, and Jonu's had good games at Huntley. I think the wind is not an issue with tight end screens. It's too hard to sit Jonu. I wouldn't sit Jonu. And where do I have John? I got John way at the top, right? I got him at tight end 3. Yeah, and Hawk at 4 because I love Hawk's matchup. But yeah, it's too hard to sit Jonu. He has been fantastic. Mooney or Devontae Smith? Yeah, I know. I'm worried about Devontae Smith here because I think Kenny Pickett's throw a lot of screen passes in this game. I think it would have real weak the game plan when he's the actual quarterback. It's going to be like screens to Brown, screens to Barkley. I don't think they want him throwing outfield because Micah Parsons could like wreck the day and then, strip sack, force an interception. So that's tough. I think Mooney has a safer floor. They both have similar ceilings. So I'd be inclined to give Mooney like a 55-45 edge. Trust your gut on that one as always. Yeah, so you may have had the same question earlier. Like I said, it's really impossible. I just think Josh Allen has, and I'll reword this now that I got time to like let it stew. Josh Allen has more outs. There are more ways he can get it done, and I know the weather is going to be a real issue, but it's not going to be an issue for Jaden Daniels either. I just think Josh Allen has more outs, and ultimately, I know he soiled it last week. I get it, but I just would trust Josh Allen in the most important game of the season and live with the result. Otherwise, if your gut says Daniels, trust it. It's very hard to argue. I keep Allen as my quarterback 1 because, again, there are so many ways he can beat, the fantasy spectrum. I'm going to go to A.J. Brown here. I just mentioned earlier, I do believe he's going to get a bunch of like short passes to get some running going after the catch. Adams is going to be in a potentially heavily weather impacted game. So based on that, I'm going to give A.J. Brown the edge. Kelvin flex 2 out of Downs, McMillan, Kendra, and Hawkinson. I'm going to go to 2 receivers. Downs has been pretty much money with Flacco. McMillan's been great for 3 weeks in a row. JC Horn's out, which means their whole corner rotation gets flipped. Miller, impossible to predict right now. Hawkinson, I love the matchup, but ultimately McMillan and Downs with their respective situations. Again, Downs with Flacco and McMillan, the way he's been, they're more integral parts of their offense. Hawkinson, I like the matchup. I can see I'm making the case for a good game, but I think the probability is Downs and McMillan are more likely than Hawkinson to come through. We're going to go with Dowdle here. I think Dowdle has the most reliable floor of this group, and he has a similar ceiling. Chig, we said earlier, they probably don't chase points this week, and that's what's gotten him 2 weeks of fantasy greatness, and I don't think that's going on here. All right, and then let's see here. Let's see where we're at question-wise here. Give me a second here. There we go. Okay. All right, next question. McMillan or Jaden Reed? If you got to compensate for Connor, Jaden Reed had 137 yards and a touchdown against Minnesota last time, and they get him on the linebackers, and the linebackers can't cover, and there's no Christian Watson. If you're swinging for defense, it's got to be Jaden Reed. And I know McMillan's had 3 good games in a row, and Reed's had 4 bad games out of the last 6 or so. He's been horrible at times. But if you're swinging for the fence here, this is a perfect matchup for Jaden Reed. Now, as to why they don't use him some weeks, I can't explain that. I would clearly say McMillan's proven in the last 3 weeks he has a safer floor than Jaden Reed. He definitely has a safer floor. But if you got to compensate for Connor and you got to swing for upside, Jaden Reed has that upside here. But again, you want the stable floor and let your other players come through, then you can go ahead and trust McMillan. Slick Rick, every week I get all the questions done. You must be a first timer. Welcome, first timer. Get the questions on every week. All right, let's see here. Any other news? Nope. And the reason that people come to me, Slick Rick, is because I give you the why, not the what. If you just want the what, you can get that anywhere on the internet. But you want the why so you can make your best decision, then head my way. Delilah, full PPR, need a flex. Kendra, Miller, Kincaid, Cooper, Brandon, Cooks, or Blackshear. Oh, man. Yeah, it's a rough one here. Kincaid, the weather's a little bit of an issue. Miller, we don't after last week losing out touches to Jordan Mims. That was brutal. Cooper with the wind, I don't see the outside passing game being a big factor. Cooks is the number 1 against that secondary, not good. Blackshear, just I don't know what Mike Boone's role is going to be. Probably would give Kincaid the best floor of this group. The boom bust option, though, would be Kendra Miller, because if they do get him involved, he could have a ceiling game, but we saw last week they could pull the rug out on him. So Kincaid for the stable floor, Miller for your boom bust play. Jeff Wilson. Oh, man, you're welcome. You're always welcome. You need one of Neighbors down, Shakir or Wicks. Neighbors is playing. He's played hurt all year. He has a great floor. The safest floor play is Neighbors. Downs has been excellent with Flacco. He has real upside, but I don't know that he has Neighbors' floor. If you want the safest floor, it's Neighbors. If you want to go for the boom bust play, Downs has real upside. You could see that 100-yard game. You could see that touchdown. But if Jonathan Taylor gets hot on the ground, maybe it doesn't materialize. Neighbors is safest. Downs is your upside play. Ronnie, Philly or Colts defense. Yeah, you know what? With no CD Lamb and Philly coming off a clunker on defense, I would bet on Philly in this one. DW, going to be injured. Yeah, well, more if you're in a PPR, you're no standard, so that kind of hurts you a bit. Yeah, because DJ Moore got some catches. That's all right. Non-PPR, London, McMillan, or Romeo Dobbs. I still think London gets his share of targets here. McMillan's been great the last 3 weeks. Carolina can't stop the run or the pass, which could be a problem. Because if they run so well, they might not have to air it out, but they usually do. I think London, though, is likely to get 8 to 10 targets. So I think he's your floor play. If you've got to swing, I'm going to go with London here. McMillan is a great choice, and if your gut says McMillan, trust it. Romeo Dobbs, there's too much potential downside. There are weeks they just don't go to him enough. At least London and McMillan are getting targets. I'm going to give London the edge because of the target volume, but I do have Mark as a downside play because, again, we really don't know what Penix is yet. But if your gut says McMillan, trust it. SP, morning. If Wandale had any type of ceiling this year, I would say yes. And that's the problem. I have Wandale in a lot of places, and I'm happy with the year and a half PPR, and that hurts Wandale more. I'm in full PPR, and so I get my 8 to 10 points out of Wandale. These are leagues are starting 10 position players, and that's fine. I just think that Wandale has like one or two touchdowns this year, and his likelihood of scoring a touchdown is very low. And so we're looking at 5 or 6 points. So if Tyreek plays, at least he did have a 6 for 60 the last time he played with Huntley, which is the only good game he had with him, and the weather is bad. But I don't think Wandale has shown us the ability to put up enough points to give you much of an edge. Trust your gut on that one. Who should you start in your flex? Adams, Thielen, Neighbors, Tyreek Hill, or Garendo? Adams would have been the number one choice, but again, I'm very concerned about the 24-mile-an-hour winds and 40-mile-an-hour gusts that are going to be there. But that's it. I have Adams my wide receiver 4. I do think he still gets force fed some targets, but I think his upside has been muted a bit. Neighbors, his floor is always great, but we haven't seen much ceiling because of the offense around him, not because of him. Tyreek, that's going to be a tough one compared to these options because of the weather and his lack of production with that quarterback. Garendo has a decent floor, but again, we don't know if he make it through a game. The guy seems to be always hurt. He's had like 3 injuries. He's barely played. So I would tend Thielen's close. I would start Adams, but if you're worried about the weather, you're worried about those 40-mile-an-hour gusts, those 24-mile-an-hour winds, Buffalo center pressure, rain. Thielen would be a very safe pivot. High floor, reasonable ceiling. I don't know that Adams is going to have that ceiling game if the weather's a problem. Go to NFLweather.com, check the most recent update. Mine is like before 2 hours ago. So just check the weather update. If it's going to be nasty, then maybe back off and go to Thielen. Otherwise, if the weather doesn't seem like it's going to be insane, then you could consider going back to Devontae. Raiders or Cowboys on defense? It's got to be the Raiders. They're playing junior varsity quarterback. All right, Fuzzy, PPR, filling a flex, Thielen or Spears. Like I told people before, we had the 4 touchdowns in 2 weeks from Spears in games that were shootouts where the Titans were chasing, playing Jacksonville. Probably a low-scoring game. There's going to be weather. Thielen has a super high floor. I would tend to go with him. Let's see where we're at question-wise in terms of how much we got to do. Oh, I don't have that many left. Okay, I can get through these. Yep. And I say I got the spammers again. All right. Next question, Rodgers or Bryce Young? Oh, that's tough. That's tough. Young is playing in rain, not wind. Rodgers is playing in rain and super heavy wind. I wish I had a good answer for you. And then I have Aaron Rodgers ranked significantly higher, though. So I will give Aaron Rodgers the edge. But again, the weather could be catastrophic. That's a very big concern. And Buffalo could send a lot of pressure. But Bryce Young is more likely to have to chase points, and the rain without that much wind could give him an edge. So trust your gut on this one. I don't have a great feel on this because of the weather for Aaron Rodgers. That's the variable that I can't factor in. I could totally make the case for Bryce Young because of that weather for Rodgers. Addison, Jennings, Devontae Smith, Ridley, Thielen, or Javonte Williams. Jennings likely has a super high floor in what should be a massive shootout. I got to go Jennings here. Much as I love Thielen, I got to go Jennings here. And I don't see Detroit corners hanging with him. Lenman, Robinson, Garendo, or Neighbors. Neighbors has the highest floor. No matter, he plays hurt every week, catches a bunch of passes, gets strong yardage. So he's the safest floor play. Look, Brian Robinson, boom bust, because could he run in 2 touchdowns? Sure. Can I predict that? No. So I would say, and Garendo's in that same bucket. And Garendo's kind of in that same bucket. And the Lions, well, with the left tackle Trent Williams being out, maybe that helps the Lions a little bit. So I would say this: Neighbors would be your super high floor play. Brian Robinson would be your boom bust play because he could get multiple touchdowns, but I can't predict he would do that. Never will predict 2 touchdowns for a player, much less 1, right? All right, next question. Felix, Colts defense against the Giants or the Eagles? I would tend to go with the Eagles because there's no CD Lamb. That would be my break one because they can really attack Dallas a lot differently. I got to go Jaden Daniels here. I do think Jaden Daniels is a great chance to run for 50+ yards here. I know Jordan Love in that they were trailing 28-0 the first time they played, and he had all those garbage time points. And look, Jordan Love's a great play. He's a great play in what should be a shootout against Minnesota. Can't go wrong with either one. I just think Jaden Daniels could run for a lot of yards. You see my rankings, they're 3 and 5 at quarterback, so they're right there. I just think Jaden Daniels has a higher floor. Trust your gut on this one. It's that close, but given the rushing potential, I'd like Daniels a bit better. Brees or McMillan? Man, it's tough because when Brees, we think he's getting work, they pulled a rug on him. So that's kind of rough. So, but he was the full-time back last week. There's going to be weather. He has to be involved. Buffalo can be run on. It's a very good matchup. McMillan's had 3 great weeks in a row. Matchup is not scary at all. Can either of them boom? Well, if you're swinging for the fence, yeah, I mean, we haven't seen it a lot, but Brees Hall has had some bigger runs. And if the rain forces the Bills to stack the box, if Brees gets past the first level, that could be that big game-changing play. So I would think that just given the likelihood of that, Brees has a slightly better chance of booming than McMillan. Next one, Laporta or Hawkinson with Darnold. 49ers are usually very good against tight ends. I think they're top 4 in tight end points against. They've been very solid against it. It is a very good matchup on paper for Hawkinson. The Packers are down a linebacker. They don't cover well in that area of the field. So I do give Hawkinson a slight edge there, but it's close enough where you trust your gut on that one. I have Hawk at 4 and Laporta at 5. So you see, I got them like right next to each other. So I mean, really, there's very little difference. Yeah, McBride and Higgins. Oh my gosh. Yeah, in that case, it probably would be Hawkinson, I would think, because Green Bay does like use cloud coverage on Justin Jefferson, so it opens up a little bit else. We'll go with the Philly defense. We'll bet against an offense with no CD Lamb. Rudolph's going to be in a heavily weather impacted game, so we're giving Flacco the edge. Matt, that's super close here. We got Ford. We got Ford at 14, and we got Spears at 15 with upside. So you see, I got them right one next to the other. Both are going to play in heavily weather impacted games. I'm going to give Spears because of the upside, the slightest edge. And I have to sneeze. Excuse me a second. Or not. All right. All right. And I got the spam here. All right. Then we got Andre Kraft, Ertz, or Okonkwo. I would think in a game that there's supposed to be rain and not great winds, like 13 miles an hour, I would think Ertz would be somewhat heavily targeted, 6 to 8 targets. This one, Okonkwo has lived on shootouts the last 2 weeks, and I don't think there's a shootout between Tennessee and Jacksonville. I think this is a super low-scoring game. If you think it's a shootout, then Okonkwo is your answer. I don't think it is. I think Ertz is the highest floor. I think Kraft has real ceiling here. I think if this game's a shootout, he could get going. If you're just swinging for upside, it's Kraft. If you want a high stable floor of like 8 to 10 PPR points, it's going to be Ertz. But if you need to get to 20, then you'd have to take a swing at Kraft. He'd be the one you'd have to go with there. I'm going to go with Kraft out of this group, Julian. And then Raiders, Titans, or Browns defense. Let me see, the Titans are going weather there. Yeah, this is a good question. The Browns, I think, have checked out. So even though it's Huntley, I'm probably not going to go with them. The Raiders are on the road. The Titans are on the road. There's going to be weather in Jacksonville. So I think the weather plays to the Titans' advantage. So I'm going to go with the Titans for that reason only. The fact that the weather could cause some sloppiness. Shane, running back, and a flex. I would sit Tracy from that group. Again, losing some goal line work to Singletary kills him. I will go with Jonnu Smith. He had 2 good games the last time he played with Tyler Huntley, and the win shouldn't impact the tight end screen game. Tyler, Jennings, or Ridley. Ridley should be in a heavily weather-impacted game. Jennings should have a fantastic matchup in a high-scoring game. So away we go. The Freak, you're welcome. I would never sit Mike Evans, and this is a pristine matchup. The rain is not going to be coupled with wind, so that's not an issue. JC Horn's out. Brian Thomas Jr., here's the deal. It's very tough to sit him because he is a superstar. The weather is supposed to be a problem. It's supposed to be thunderstorm. It's supposed to be enough wind to be a bit of a problem. Addison could go off. Green Bay's been good against second wide receivers. I would not sit Evans or Thomas Jr., but trust your gut in your championship game. We've seen Addison go for 160 yards in games when teams have just focused on Jefferson. We've seen it happen. Thomas Jr., if you're worried about the weather, then go ahead and play Addison, who'll be nice indoor game. But yeah, that said, that's the way I think we're going to, I would not sit 2 superstars. Addison's a great player, but Thomas Jr., we've seen him get it done in bad circumstances. And again, I'm not excited about the weather for him. But again, make that gut call based on that. Kevin, you're welcome. JMO or Brian Robinson. I think this week Brian Robinson has a higher floor. And I do think there's potential for a touchdown. Jameson Williams, the 49ers defense is at full health. Jameson did well against them, and it's just for everybody. He did well against them in the NFC Championship game last year. He had a 42-yard rushing touchdown, 2 for 24, I think, through the air, and a touchdown as well. His speed plays well against them. I just think Brian Robinson's safer. But I will say this. If you got to shoot for, like, big upside, then I do think you could consider Jameson Williams for big upside. But I think Robinson has a stable floor with moderate upside. So that's the safe play. But if you really got to swing for it, then you can look at JMO. Downs or Tracy. Downs has normally been money with Flacco. Tracy's lost some goal line work to Singletary. There's a chance Jonathan Taylor takes the game over and they don't pass, but Downs has just gotten it done with Flacco, and I'm going to lean over. If your gut says Tracy, I get it. Peter. So the Raiders deal has typically been if they trail, Abdullah gets a lot of work. If they have a lead, Madison is more likely the lead guy. Miller, they pulled a rug with him on Jordan Mims last week, so now I don't know what to expect. If they didn't do that, I would have said Miller. But right now, based on the likelihood this game is close, Madison would likely get the most work, likely get a goal line carry. I'd give him a slight edge. Yeah, I know. James, I know. They cleared him to play. He started. I know. That's a tough one. Brian Robinson, Ford, Tracy, Cooks, McMillan, Kincaid. It's close between Brian Robinson and McMillan. Both have great floors and both have decent ceilings. And McMillan's had 3 great games in a row. I tend to think that the Washington run game gets something done against Atlanta. I think Robinson is the safest floor. I think McMillan's a little riskier. I think McMillan could have a little more ceiling, assuming you're in PPR. But I think the safe play of Robinson might be the way I would go, but I would give strong consideration to McMillan as well. Ford, Tyreek, or Dobbs. Oh, man, I know. Tyreek hasn't done too much. He's not 100%. He hasn't done well with the games he played with Tyler Huntley, so there's that. Ford, the weather, I imagine Miami's packs things in. Now Ford catches passes. He had that crazy, weird 66-yard run, which I don't know how the heck that happened. Dobbs is the safest. Should be a shootout. He's the safest. Ford's your boom bust guy because he could get that crazy run. He could get that catch near the end zone. Dobbs is safest. The boom bust play is Ford. Minnesota D, Dallas D, or Cleveland D. I'm going to probably go with the Cleveland D against Tyler Huntley. I think they've checked out, but Minnesota, I just don't see them doing much against Jordan Love. Dallas, I don't see them doing much against what I expect to be a heavy screen pass game, a very, very safe game for Kenny Pickett. I don't think they're going to make him air it out. Kittler, Spears, and the flex. You know what? George Kittle is a player that is very tough to sit. He's flirting with 1,000 yards this year. Spears has 4 touchdowns in the last 2 weeks. They've been shootouts. They've been trailing. I think this game's low scoring, so I don't know that he has the potential to see that type of goal line work. I'm going to give Kittle the edge here, and what should be a shootout in Detroit with all those injuries. I just don't see them doing a great job covering the tight end. I give Kittle the edge. Kyle, neighbors in bad weather, Magna with nothing to play for. White playing behind Irving and a bad Carolina defense. Garendo could pull a James Conner. If you're worried about Garendo pulling a James Conner, then yeah, definitely don't play him. Neighbors has been hurt all year. He's gotten it done like every week. They just force him the ball. And he has the safest floor. Now, Irving had like 11 for 81, I think, in that first meeting against Carolina. So he doesn't need a whole lot of work to get it done against him. But when he's playing second fiddle, it's a little bit of a problem because if he doesn't get that big run, it's a deal. I think Neighbors is your safest play. He's going to get you 6 to 8 catches. He's going to get you 50 to 65 yards. If they score a touchdown, he has a chance for that. It's not the corners aren't necessarily problematic for him. I would tend to say Neighbors is safest. I would say the best blend of boom bust would be White because they both running backs went off against Carolina last time, but Neighbors would be safest. Jorge, I would give London the edge. I think they see similar targets. London with that brief thing on the injury report, but apparently he's fine. And I do think there's potentially more scoring. I don't think either game's high scoring, but I think there's a more probability that London has a higher concentration of targets. I don't think Chiggy Okonkwo, again, I told everybody earlier, he was benefiting from the shootouts and the trailing there. I think that game's low scoring. So I'm going to go to Hockenson. Greg, Achane or Ford. Oh, man, I know. You know what? I know Achane has done nothing, next to nothing, with Huntley a quarterback in 3 games. I can't sit him over Ford. I know Ford had the 66-yard run last week. I get it. I still think Miami stacks the box. I'm gonna go to Achane. He hasn't done anything with Huntley. Trust your gut. But if Achane breaks 2 long plays and he's on your bench, you're gonna kick yourself in the offseason. Oh, I got a super chat question. Hang on. All right, here we go. I'll come back to Logan in a second. Allen in the rain or Purdy at Detroit? Yeah, you're very justified in your question. Very justified. Purdy should be fine, right? Josh Allen soiled the bed last week. So there's that. Allen has so many outs. He can run for 90 yards and 2 or 3 touchdowns. Again, I think in the fantasy championship, and the weather's a problem. But you're going to kick yourself if Josh Allen scores 40 points and Purdy scores 22. And I think ultimately, Purdy probably doesn't have a ceiling anywhere in the stratosphere of Allen. Allen's floor could still be 22 points. And I know last week he did way less than that. But I still think he could run for a ton of yards if he has to. It's a great question, but I won't. I would back Josh Allen here because, again, he has so many outs. All right, let's see where I was at question-wise now. All right, see where we're at here. Of course, this thing jumped on me here. All right, Logan. I'm on Logan. All right, and then I got a few questions left, so we'll be done in a few minutes here. All right, H.N. McLaurin or Breece Hall half PPR. I find it nearly impossible to sit McLaurin. When he's had bad matchups, he's gotten it done. He's gotten it done almost every week. Breece Hall, there are weeks where they pull the rug on him. They give the other running backs work and high leverage. They pull him at the goal line sometimes. Achane had 3 bad games with Huntley, and now we have weather. And McLaurin has just kind of been that constant. I almost think you've rode him all season, and Achane was a week winner for you last week. But we saw the 3 games. It's just so different. So yeah, I go with McLaurin and just, can he have a bad game? Yeah, but he's proven us wrong all year when we bet against him. And then Greg, Colts or the Dolphins, D. I'm going to bet against Dorian Thompson-Robinson and the weather. So I'd go with the Dolphins, D there. Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah. Spears or Jamison Williams? That's a good question. It's a good question. Spears should have a safer floor. He should get you 14 to 16 touches in this game. And that floor means something. And the 4 touchdowns the last 2 weeks, again, those were high-scoring shootout games where they were trailing and they were wild. They're playing Jacksonville. I think this is probably a 16-13 game, so the touchdowns might not be there. So I think Spears is your high floor play. High floor, call it a day. If he scores, great. Williams is your boom-bust ceiling play because, again, he could break a big one against the 49ers. They're healthy on defense now, mostly healthy. He's your boom bust play, but Spears is a real safe high floor play. So it depends what you want for your championship lineup. Let's see here. Tyler, I'm going to go Jennings here. Jennings should see a lot of volume. It should be a shootout. I don't see the Detroit corners hanging with him. The pass rush isn't a problem right now. I think Jennings is like Spears is close. Neighbors has a great floor. Spears is a great floor. I think Jennings has the same floor as them, but I think he has more upside in what should be a shootout. Be growing stuff. So because I would normally say Brian Thomas Jr. here, but because the weather is supposed to be a massive problem, I would pivot to McLaurin in this case. McLaurin, we've learned our lesson when we've sat him, right? I have McLaurin as my wide receiver 6, Thomas is my 8. But the difference between the weather in the 2 games is the wind in the Brian Thomas Jr. game. The wind's supposed to be a little more significant. McLaurin is supposed to be rain, but it's not supposed to be so much wind. So if they even get, yeah. So I'm going to go with McLaurin. Love or Goff? Oh man, that's a tough one. Love was in a massive shootout. They're on 28-0 the first time he played Minnesota in week 4. He was coming off that bad knee. Goff's probably in a shootout as well. I think both have to throw. In terms of my rankings, I put Jordan Love at 5 and Goff at 6. So you see, I've got them right next to each other. The tiebreaker might be, and why I have them ahead of them, is there's a possibility, even against a tough run defense, that Josh Jacobs struggles a little bit. And if he does, then Jordan Love is taking a little bit more on himself. It's razor thin close. You see them, I have them together, so trust your gut on it. I would give Love the slightest edge, but it's close. Kyle, thanks for the kind words. Ferguson has been horrible despite cake matchups because of his quarterback. Chig, like I said earlier, has had this situation where they've been in shootouts and he's getting all these targets. This probably isn't a shootout. That said, Chig's the hot hand. Ferguson has not done much of anything. This is not a very good matchup. No CD Lamb. I would probably give a 51-49% edge to Ferguson. My rankings are probably a Ferguson higher. I got Ferguson at 9 with downside and then Chig with 12. So they're close, but I don't have the downside Chig that like on Ferguson. Like that could be like a 1 for 6. So trust your gut on that one. If there's somebody on my list that's ranked higher that you could get on waivers, I doubt it. But if there is, then you can take a look at that as well. Downs or McMillan, super close. I would give down. Both teams could take off in the running game and not need the receivers. So there's that. Downs has been great with Flacco. So and he is like Flacco's number 1 target, whereas McMillan's always going to be the number 2. Because of that, I give Downs a slight edge. Mayfield or Love. You know what? I got Mayfield at 2. He seems to get it done every week. And he runs. He runs for yardage too. They've just been scoring so many points. That one's super close. Trust your gut because if the running game gets going and they get a huge lead, maybe Mayfield doesn't throw as much. Love is probably in a shootout. So you can make that case. I have Mayfield ranked higher because he's been a superior option almost even in bad matchups. So I would go that way, but trust your gut on that. You're riding with Terry. Good. Addison or JMO? Oh, man, that's a tough one, too. These are very similar options. Where do I have them at? Addison at 17. Where do I have JMO at? I have JMO significantly lower, don't I? I have JMO at 24. I think ultimately that the cloud coverage on Justin Jefferson is going to be a thing, and I think that Darnold's going to be motivated to throw it to Addison because the coverage is going to be lighter and no Jair Alexander. I think Addison has a higher floor and a similar ceiling, so I'd go with Addison. Myers is safer because of the potential. There's supposed to be 24-mile-an-hour winds with 40-something gusts in that Garrett Wilson game. I think Myers is safer. Happy New Year, Greg. PPR flex, Spears or Kittle? Yeah, somebody had the same question. Spears has 4 touchdowns in the last 2 weeks. They were games they were trailing. They were shootouts. I don't think there's a shootout with them in Jacksonville. Kittle should be in the shootout. I give Kittle the edge. One more and we're out. Last question. Jay Smells, if Tua doesn't play, and he won't play. So HN for Garendo. Garendo's close, but he has been beat up right and left. Ford's in a bad weather game. Tracy's losing some goal line work. I know Achan's been terrible with Huntley. I just think over those players, I think I would not want to take a risk of keep having him go off on my bench. Trust your gut on that one. I would play HN, but trust your gut on that one. I'll take one more, and I got to go. Ambling, Hill or Alec Pierce. You know what? I get it. Hill's been terrible. At least he had a 6 for 60 in the last game with Huntley. So there's that. Alec Pierce, it could be a 0. So Hill probably doesn't get a 0. So that's the only reason I would say that. All right, everybody. Take care. Good luck in your games, and we will talk soon. You're welcome, everyone. Thank you for the kind words.